Welcome to ReLAWtionship, where real-life couple Justin and Candise share their keeping it real perspective on the ins and outs of their personal and professional experiences, navigating the ups and downs of partnerships in life and business. They will also offer practical advice for maintaining strong, healthy, fun, and successful relationships in life and business. If you're ready for comedic and insightful exploration of life, love, law, business, and everything else in between, you're in the right place. Buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride. Here are your hosts, Justin and Candise.
We're here today on ReLAWtionship, the podcast with my wife, Candise Shanbron. I'm Justin Cernitz. We're partners in business and we're partners in life, which sometimes is crazy. Today we have some really special guests with us today. We have Brandon T. Adams and Kevin Harrington. Thank you guys for being here.
Great for having us. Thank you.
Brandon T., why don't you give us a little background on yourself?
Yeah.
And what it is that you do?
So I grew up in Northeast Iowa, grew up in the ice business, so I sold packaged ice for a living. Did that for a good part of my life. Back about a decade ago, I got into doing video production, started creating video content, and also helping people raise money, and also putting on events. So that was kind of my beginning. Fast forward, got into producing TV shows and doing a lot of consulting and advising with Kevin here. And so, in a nutshell, that's my background, and that's what I do today.
You didn't tell he's won a couple Emmys along the way,
Yeah, I was waiting for that.
I've never seen Brandon so shy like that.
Yeah, he's done a great job. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And Kevin, a little about you.
Yeah, so I guess I'm a serial entrepreneur and started my first business when I was 15 years old. And before that, I worked at my dad's bars, okay? So I had some entrepreneurial experience, but bottom line is, one day I was watching cable television, and this is back in the early 80s, so it was a long time ago, but the channel went dark for 6 hours, and I called the cable company, and they said, oh, it's a new channel that only has a budget for 18 hours a day, and 6 hours a day was going to be downtime, nothing. And that's when the light bulb went off in my head. Well, what if I could put some programming in there that might sell something? And so I started doing product shows. And today they're called infomercials. Back then, we just said they're 30-minute long commercials, okay? And we were doing kitchen products like Jack LaLanne's Juicer and Tony Little Fitness and George Foreman and all those kind of things. So I've, now fast forward, I've done 1,000 infomercials. We've done quite a few billions of dollars in sales. And I got a phone call. This was an amazing game changer for me. Mark Burnett was on the line and said, hey, I want to talk to you about my new show I'm doing called Shark Tank. So I went and met Mark and became an original shark on the show Shark Tank. So that was a lot of fun in the process too. So.
See the guy that did Survivor also?
Yeah, Mark Burnett did Survivor
too.
Yeah. And in fact, my wife said, I hope he doesn't do any crazy things like, like he does on Survivor, because what is Shark Tank, right? I'm like, sounds like a dangerous show.
Right. In the waters, right. If your pitch isn't great, a shark comes out.
Well, the funny thing, when we shot the pilot, we shot in 2008, believe it or not. That's how long ago Shark Tank started. And I was part of the pilot and all the early seasons, but they had a tank, a shark tank with live sharks in the tank. And they joked, if someone doesn't get a deal, they get thrown in the shark tank. Okay. So,
I'm not so far off.
So, but it was too cost prohibitive to have live sharks for every show. So in the future, they had animated sharks in the shark tank. So
maybe a liability issue too.
Yeah, might be a little liability, right? Then they got to feed those sharks.
You have to feed those sharks. Well, that's actually brings me to a good point now, and thank you for your backgrounds. But, having known Brandon T. Adams for a while now and now having met you, I'm really curious and I want the audience to really know, how did you guys meet each other and how did you guys decide to partner up? Because you guys come from different backgrounds in different parts of the United States. Yep. How did you link up?
So I'll take this. So it's funny, you think about Shark Tank. I don't know if Kevin knows this whole story, but I was failing speech class and I had to get extra credit to pass it. And I went to a presentation by a guy named Cactus Jack Barringer. And he's speaking to like 300 of us. I'm watching. He plays this thing on Shark Tank and it's Kevin and him and they did a deal together. And so I stayed connected with Cactus Jack. He led me to a book called Think and Go Rich, which kind of changed how I thought. But Jack became my mentor. And so I knew deep down inside, I'm like, okay, I'm going to learn from Jack, but eventually I'm going to get into business with Kevin. And so long story short, about 3 years later, after working with him, I had got a brief introduction, and then I reached out to Kevin. Back at the time, he was his assistant. I sent a video and I said, hey, Kevin, Brendan T. Adams here. It was before I had the T, it was Brendan Adams. And I said, I have this event I'm doing in Iowa at the Iowa State Fairgrounds called Young Entrepreneur Convention. I would love to have you speak. And so I was surprised. I didn't know if anybody would ever respond. 24 hours later, his team reached out. I talked to him. 8 months later, Kevin came into Iowa. He spoke at my event. And from there, we built a really good relationship. And from that, went on to we did a book launch together, put a shark in your tank. We did a product that went on and did $150 million called Peeps. Yeah. And then we did some TV shows together. But we won an Emmy together. We won an Emmy together. But it all started with a distant mentor that he went on Shark Tank with, which you've done infomercials with
Cactus.
Yep.
Yeah. Cactus Jack was from Iowa.
From Iowa.
Ames?
Atlantic, Iowa. He lives in Ames.
Ames now, right?
Yeah.
And so it was very, very powerful that when Brandon invited me to the Iowa State Fair, I said, I've been there many, many times. And you think, well, why would an entrepreneur like me go to the Iowa State Fair? It's where I found products. Because we would go to the fairs and watch the guys pitching products, right? Mm-hmm. They were, Billy Mays would be doing the cleaning product, and Arnold Morris would be selling Ginsu knives. And so the fairs was one of the places that I developed a lot of relationships with what are called the pitch guys, right? And so Iowa State Fair was always near and dear to me. And I said, hey, if I can go back to a place that I've generated a lot of business and meet a lot of local entrepreneurs, could be a really good thing. So I said, let's do it. So,
well, I gotta ask you this question because, Brandon knows me pretty well now, and he knows I have to always keep it real. And I always want to know the things that probably everybody wants to know, but they never want to ask. So this is my question for you, Kevin. So you get, a complete stranger reaches out to you.
Right.
And says, gives you his pitch or quasi pitch. What goes through your mind? Because I bet, given all of your accomplishments, you're the serial entrepreneur, uber successful, I'm sure people approach you all the time. So what goes through your mind when you hear from a guy like Brandon, who you don't know from a hole in the wall?
Right.
What makes you take that leap of faith? Because the truth of it is, you could have been like, oh, here's another guy that wants something from me. Right. Or here's another guy that wants to pitch something. Yeah. But what was it, or what was the je ne sais quoi, let's say, about Brandon T. Adams that made you go, okay, doesn't sound like the psycho.
Right. I don't know. What was it? Well, so Candice, that is an awesome question. And I'm going to say this. The first thing that hits my mind is, if I affiliate with somebody like Brandon, is there any negativity that could happen from that, right? So, because you got to be careful endorsing something or being part of something that doesn't have all the, the great intentions maybe, because there's a lot of people out there that are looking to take advantage of people. 100%, yeah. They want to use me to connect with people to take advantage of them. Right. And so I have to monitor that for sure. But so this was very powerful because Brandon was dealing with someone that I had known for 30 years, Cactus Jack. Right. So the fact that Cactus was mentoring Brandon, that was a big plus. There's a person that I know that I can get, and I did. I called Cactus and said, hey, tell me about Brandon. Right. So we got the good word there, number one. Secondly, Brandon was putting on a young entrepreneurs convention. I was one of the founders of the Young Entrepreneurs Organization in 1987 called YEO, which today it changed names to EO along the way because it used to be just for young entrepreneurs. And as me and the other founders got older, we said, we have to make this for all entrepreneurs, okay? So, because in the beginning, you had to be under 40. Well, when we all hit 40, we said, let's make it 50. And then when we hit 50, we said, let's make it unlimited. So anyway, EO is the world's largest entrepreneurial organization. We're in 200 cities, 55 countries, tens of thousands of members, and billions of dollars in sales that come through. I think it's like 500 billion that come through EO. And so I said to myself, organizations like EO, YEO, YEC, the Young Entrepreneurs Convention, it was near and dear to me because I like young entrepreneurs and I like mentoring and helping. And that's part of my DNA is to help entrepreneurs take their idea to the next step. Right. And so it just, everything made sense. And there was one last thing. So, Brandon checked out very good with Cactus. His young entrepreneurs concept made total sense. And then Brandon said, and Kevin, you're also going to network with some really cool people while you're there. Right. And, one of them, Jeff Hoffman, he was one of the co-founders of Priceline. Right. He's like, so you'll be having some fun and giving some messaging, et cetera, but you're also going to make some great connections while you're there. So all of those things together made it a win-win for me to do it. And it
was a lot of fun.
We cut a deal and I made it to
Kevin, when you're 85 or so, you could change it to SEO, the Senior Entrepreneur Organization.
I like that. Hey, I'm getting close. We're a few years away, but not too
Still got 30 years or so.
So that brings me to the next point. So now you've determined, you've vetted Brandon. Right. He's not a psycho.
Yeah.
What happens next? You guys decide to meet and have a powwow session, or what is the organic process by which you guys then took the initial meeting to then, at the convention in Iowa.
Yeah.
What then happens next organically of how you guys ended up meshing, getting to know each other that led you to the next deal or the next project?
I'll say something and I'll flip it to you, Brandon. But so because I'm an old entrepreneur and I started my first business more than 50 years ago, okay?
You're an OG.
I'm an old entrepreneur, right?
You don't look
senior entrepreneur. But I'm old school, and I was in the as seen on TV space, which is now TV viewership has dropped by 70% in the last 10 years. So I was in a transition out of the as seen on TV business. Brandon was now coming up as a digital entrepreneur, and everything Brandon was doing at the event, he's shooting videos, he's doing this, he's doing that, and I'm like, what is all of this? And it's like, well, this is for digital content. And, you got to create content as a spokesperson, et cetera, just like Brandon does for his own brand. He builds Brandon T. Adams' brand, but he also shows entrepreneurs like me how to do the same thing. So we started down that path of creating content, creating videos, writing a book, et cetera. And so what I saw in Brandon was some of this new age entrepreneurial activity in the digital space. And I said, I'm going to be able to learn from him. I'm going to be able to learn a lot from him, even though I'm a successful entrepreneur, because I haven't been doing the things that the entrepreneurs are doing today.
And to add to that, it's funny, 7 years ago, I since exited outside of that business. I still show up, but it's still living on that event. It's going out there. But that experience was just one of multiple times where we met, we did business. And I think in any relationship, it's an ongoing process. It's not just a one and done, here we go. It's, okay, what other things can we work on? And so what a lot of people don't know is prior to that event, I actually had the opportunity before he was already booked to come. I had the opportunity. Somebody called me and said, hey, if you get here tomorrow, you'll get a 30-minute car ride with Kevin Harrington and also his son, Brian. And I'm like, okay, I'm there. And so I booked a flight. This is to St. Pete. I went to Kevin's house. We did a 30-minute car ride. And we got talking about different projects. And he saw I just helped a guy named John Lee Dumas we did about $500,000 a month for a book launch. And we got talking, and I was kind of reel in to have Kevin start pitch me ideas for a book launch. And from that car ride, and by the end of that weekend, we had signed a deal to go launch a book together called Put a Shark in Your Tank. So we actually launched it live at the event. So it was like a double whammy. And then that book launch actually led to a mastermind 4 months later where we met Danielle Patton, which led to a product deal called Peeps, which went on less than $500,000 in revenue. It went on to do $150 million. And so that was one of the first big marketing campaigns, clients. But it's just an example how one deal kind of turned into another. And then one day I went to him and I said, hey, Kevin, I have this idea. My wife and I, actually fiance at the time, we want to go travel the country and create a show. And that show was called Success in Your City. And so I said, would you be a mentor, executive producer? He said yes. And he flew to different places. We worked together. And that's where we ended up winning an Emmy together. But just one thing usually leads to another.
Right.
You got to constantly show up in a relationship. He was adding value to me. I was helping him. But we also kind of just got this groove. I think I looked at his background. We had similar backgrounds. I was in the ice business. He was in the bar business with his dad. Yeah. And so we just kind of connected, but then we kept working on projects together.
Let me say this. He glossed over kind of quickly, but we did one mastermind together. 10 people show up. We're sitting in a meeting room with 10 of us around a conference table, and a guy pulls out this product called Peeps, puts it down on the desk, and says, "This is going to be your next home run." And we're looking at it, thinking, "What the heck is that?"
What the heck is that?
But as he demonstrated this product, is an eyeglass cleaner, and
I saw you guys demonstrating.
I said, "I love this,"
right.
And that product, we put a partnership deal together with this gentleman right then and there, and then when we put it through our processes of what we do by putting things into digital marketing, Facebook and Instagram, and now TikTok, etc., this thing just took off. And as he said, it ended up at over $150 million in sales. So Brandon was bringing big value to me, and it made total sense for us to continue to do a lot of things together. In fact, I thought you were going to say it, but he and his wife lived in Minneapolis, which is a little bit chilly certain times of the year, right? So
I didn't know that.
I said, Brandon, we'd do a lot more business if you were closer to me here in St. Petersburg. So he now lives
down the street,
right around the corner from
blocks away from my house, okay? And we see each other on a regular basis. So that way we have more chances to do more business together.
That's amazing. Yeah. So we talked about, the deals that you guys do and that it comes together, organically, and you guys bringing value to each other. But for people out there that are either already in partnerships or thinking about, partnering up together, how do you guys delineate what each of you do? I mean, is it a formal process by which you sit down and, you're at a conference room table and you say, well, you know what, Brandon, I'm going to do this. And Kevin, you say, I'm going to do this. How do you stay in your own lanes? How do you divvy up responsibilities and duties with all the things that you guys do together?
Well, so each project has, sort of a business plan. And, the Peeps product, for example, after we cut the deal, we have a team that takes over. They start writing scripts and get video production, and we started shooting videos. And so we have certain people that are responsible for certain of those duties, and Brandon participates in that process also. So basically, we have what we call a dream team, and it includes lawyers and video people and writers and just this group of
influencers too.
Influencers.
Yeah.
You always need the lawyer. Always need a lawyer.
Always need a good lawyer.
That's a shameless plug, Justin.
Yeah, that's good. So we pull that dream team together, and what's interesting is we've all been doing this for so many years. It's sort of like we already know who's doing what,
Got it.
Because
it is. It's crazy. I was just going to say that.
Yeah, we've done 1,000+ product launches. At least, and more often than not, we fail. Like 2 out of 3 times we might fail, but the 1 out of 3 that we succeed can be huge, and like the $150 million story, right? So we basically, each person has a certain expertise they bring to the table, and the dream team pulls together and makes it happen.
I'm glad you mentioned the word failure, because I am also one of the many people out there that believe that you can't have success without the failures, because the failures are what teaches you those important lessons. So, we talk about, we've spent some time talking about the glamorous part of the amazing things that you guys have done together and accomplished. But I'm a keeping it real person, and I really like to get some real life practical advice from people, especially people like you folks that have really done great things and are uber successful. So I want to hear from both of you, and maybe Kevin, if you want to lead off, what are some of the takeaways of, what not to do either in business or in partnerships, things that you've learned that to not do or to stay away from, valuable lessons that you and Brandon have learned together or separately.
Yeah.
Because it probably wasn't the dream team right when you started. It took time.
It took time.
It took time.
It takes time. And I think, we stay in our own lane is one thing, because I know certain things that I'm good at, and I know also things that I'm not good at. So that's why I like to get things started, bring the team together, and then I like to see a lot of great self-starters like Brandon take their role and just run with it, right? Yes, we do oversee all the processes of what everyone's doing, but if you're dealing with the right people at every level, you don't have to be overly concerned that it's not happening right? Because, what you don't want to have is all these things are supposed to cascade to a final conclusion of a launch. If there's one weak link in the fence, you're going to have a problem. So we've got this strong team we're all pushing together to put that launch together, and then boom, it takes off. So I think the key thing is lining up the right people, giving them space to run with it, and the right people meaning self-starters that don't need to be asking questions every step of the way, because you need to be able to take the ball and run with it. And Brandon is exactly that.
Yeah, you need to be self-motivated and kind of we're a big component of bringing in the right experts, bring in the right camera crew, bring in the right script writer, or we're writing the script, or bring in the right talent on camera, bring the right influencer, bring it all together in one. And we don't micromanage it. We bring the right people and let them kind of do their best thing, and we make sure it all happens. We bring it together, right? You call me the execution man. We execute on it, and then that makes a successful business relationship. I would say too, when we look at partnerships, we're very particular on who we work with. We want to make sure they're good energy, they're good people. We look around, when he called Cactus Jack to look at me, I do the same thing. I call around and I see about the person before we partner with them, because the biggest mistake can be is if we get into business with the wrong person, and then it's a lot of time, money, and energy wasted.
But how do you go about determining that? Obviously, there's knowledge is at our disposal with the internet.
So I'll say what I do is I will go and look at all their social media profiles. I'll look at their website. I'll Google them. I'll look just kind of their background, their persona. And there's a lot you can find about somebody doing that.
Yes.
And then also if you see somebody they're in business with, we know a lot of people. Hey, do you know this person? And then from that, and then after doing obviously a couple of calls with them, we can really find out if they're a right fit for us. Because again, nothing is worse than when you go into business with the wrong person. No money, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, no money can solve that. If you're in business with the wrong person, it's a nightmare.
Have you guys ever partnered up with anybody in which both of you had a different take on the partnership? Is there ever a situation in which Kevin's I don't know if you have this one right, Brandon T. Adams, or vice versa? Has there ever been a moment where you guys are I don't know if we're seeing eye to eye on this one?
Well, yes, for sure, and more than once. But recently, I'm not going to mention the company because we've made an investment in the company, and we own equity in the company, and we want to build this business. And Brandon and I started with a game plan that we all agreed to. And in a matter of 2 weeks, the management of the company saw an opportunity to kind of change the whole deal that we had, right? And it was, you know which one I'm talking about, right?
Yep.
So it wasn't a very pleasant experience, because I had invested a lot of money into this company, and then we had a structure of how we were going to run the business from there. And as we just got started, they came back and said it's not working, and boom, 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 boom. And so the reality is that sometimes we ended up finding out that what we actually had done was working very well. And so it's the company. I don't want to say too much, but the bottom line is sometimes there's reasons why the company does what they do, and at the end of the day, they changed the whole relationship on us, and we didn't feel it was proper.
And to add to it, the people that we work with, whether the CEO or the founder, they have to be coachable and they have to take insight, because if they come in and they're questioning everything we do, it makes it really hard, because we're the experts, right? We've been doing this for years. They need to be open to different feedback, because if they don't run with it, then they're going to stay in their same way, and then we can't do anything.
Right.
See, the other thing, we have a philosophy of test before you invest kind of thing. So, in other words, let's get the best creative that we can, and then let's test it. But let's not go spend, hundreds of thousands or millions or tens of thousands even. Let's go spend thousands, hundreds of dollars, right?
Right.
So test small, learn, and then tweak it and then go from there. Some people want to just go to the top of the mountain right away. Well, it doesn't happen that way. It takes time. And so if you think you start today and in 30 days you've got all the answers, no, it might take 60 days. It might take, we say 6 to 8 weeks in many cases it takes to kind of figure out the offers,
get the foundation
built. So we're very good at that, and tweaking and making things happen.
When you guys are evaluating, if somebody either pitches you or if somebody comes to you with a business opportunity, in all the opportunities that you guys have had together, what would you say have been the best characteristics that you guys have both seen in the people that have brought opportunities to you or pitched you for something? What are some of the best characteristics that you have seen in others that either impressed you or that you think is that successful?
Yeah, I'm going to let you go with
so
that.
I would say self-driven. They're people that are motivated, and they're not going to constantly call you up and always be you give them direction, they'll run with it, and they'll come to you when they're ready for more direction.
Right.
So they're really self-driven, and they understand they need to be surrounded by the right people. And they don't want to know everything. They're just okay, they want to bring the experts. They stay in their lane, and they let the experts do their work. That's what I've noticed. I don't know other things, Kevin, for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I always kind of go back to, self-driven is a great explanation of that. And you're driven for your own skill sets, but you know where your weaknesses are. And I'm talking about me and Brandon, because we both then bring the right people in to support where we have our weaknesses. And that's what makes the dream team a successful group of people operating together, because a legal person has a little different perspective on maybe the timing and how you're going to go about doing something versus a marketing person, right? So, but sometimes you can put the two together and you end up with a modified plan, because let's not just jump like crazy. We got to make sure we have all the legal things taken care of, right? So a good dream team recognizes the strengths and lets the people run with their strengths and builds the support around that team in the process.
That's something that I hear time and time and again, and I need to take that advice myself, because being a control freak, it's not easy to relinquish that control and to learn, and you think you know it all.
Yeah.
So that's some valuable insight even for somebody like myself.
It's nice. You've got family on your side. We've got family. My son, I have two boys that are both in the business, and I consider Brandon family too, as we've been together now for many years putting deals together. So I think it's when you have a family foundation, it's easier to build the rest of things, and also to depend on those people and not be worried that you're going to get taken advantage of.
Because it's trust.
It's trust.
Is probably one of the most important foundations for any kind of partnership, wouldn't you say?
Yes. I mean, you have to trust your partner. If we don't trust each other, then it's always going to be constant questions,
Yeah.
constant micromanaging. You know, we all have to be able to just run with what we need to run with.
Yeah.
And it works out very well, at least with us, and it seems like with you guys as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And we're going to wrap this up. I know everybody has a busy day ahead of each other, but I just wanted to thank you guys again for being here.
This was fun.
Yes.
I'm glad. Have you guys found the secret sauce, at least in your own opinion, on how making a partnership, these relationships work? What is your secret?
Okay, I'll
You go first.
I'll go first.
But that's also, the secret sauce to life, partnership.
Right.
All around, yeah, 360.
I think for me, first of all, I worked with my father when I was 11 years old in his restaurant, his bar and his restaurant, and he had multiple places over the years. But my dad was my mentor, and now I mentor my kids, my two boys. And so I also don't keep my wife blind to everything I'm doing. I want her to understand what I do and be supportive. Because, at one point in my career, I was traveling 250 days a year, and it was very difficult to get a supportive wife at that particular time. So I realized, wait a minute, I can't be too selfish. I can't drive my bus the way I want to. I've got a family, I've got a wife, and I've got children. And so I think the important thing for balance, I now have backed that off. I'm way less than 100 days a year now traveling. I try to make my goal is to get it to about 50 days a year traveling. 1 day a week would be fine. To travel 1 day a week is not so bad, but you need to balance your life. You need to balance the energies, the things, your travel, the number of deals that you do. I mean, we could do deals all day, every day,
right,
but then we don't have time for family and the rest. So it's very important to have balance, and for me, that means including the family in part of that business future also.
That's great.
So he's probably got to figure it out more than me. I'm still trying to figure it all out. I mean, I think communication is key. I think one thing, just looking at business, we sit down, Brian, his son, and Kevin and I, and we look at, okay, for this year, like, what do we want to focus on? And maybe do we want to do less traveling? We've had conversations lately of, if we're going to do something, let's just have people come to us, because we do have a lot of opportunity and we can only take on so many. So it's constant communication. For me, and looking into a relationship, it's not easy when you're traveling. In the last 4 days, I've been on 6 planes. And so I'm traveling, I'm in different cities, and I'm not seeing my wife, and I'm doing different work and speaking. And so it's definitely a challenge at times. I think communication's key, whether it's a relationship or a business partner, but also, like Kevin said, it's keeping your significant other in the loop of what you're doing. They may not want to know it all, especially like you're talking on stuff.
Oh, I want to know it all.
I know Kevin and I, we'll do podcast shows at our own houses, and our wife will say, you say the same thing every time. Well, it's a different audience.
Right. That's true.
But first time they're hearing it.
But they hear it all the time. So it's a constant communication. And like he said too, it's sometimes you have to sometimes I feel like I'm selfish when I do. You got to meet in the middle and stuff. And I think communication, constantly communicating with your business partner or with your significant other, and aligning your goals in the same direction.
I love it. Well, thank you guys so much.
Kevin Harrington, Brandon Adams, thank you so much for being on our podcast today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Great times.
That's a wrap for this week's episode. Don't miss next week's episode for more relatable, real, and practical insights from ReLAWtionship, packed with even more candid conversations. So make sure to subscribe, tune in, and keep your wine glass full. And if you want to share your own experience or ask a question, follow us on social media and feel free to reach out. Go to CernitzLaw.com, call 888-68-DAMAGE, or email us at cshanbron@CernitzLaw.com or jcernitz@CernitzLaw.com.